Hello everyone, and today I want to talk to you about bike theft. And more to the point, was the London Mayor Sadiq Khan correct when he said that manufacturers need to do more to stop bikes being nicked, particularly in London? Well, there's been a fair few views around the place regarding whether Sadiq Khan was right in what he said. And I just wanted to give you kind of my take on things. So was Sadiq Khan right where he pretty much firmly laid the blame of motorbike theft in London at the feet of the motorcycle manufacturers, saying that they've got to do more? I think he has got a point, but he's only partially right. For those of you old enough to remember and be back at the time of the 80s and the real hot hatchback, the Sierra Cosworths, the Escort Cosworths, all those sorts of things, you'll know that joyriding particularly was a huge issue, and insurance premiums just went through the roof for those sorts of vehicles, and it was because they were being nicked so easily. Car theft really was out of control at one stage in this country, and the car manufacturers, to their credit, responded, and security on cars has become increasingly more complicated and better, so much so now that often thieves will try and either carjack or commit burglary to get inside the house to actually get the keys to be able to steal a car. That's how good the security has become. And bikes have lagged somewhat behind. Now, a bike's always going to be easier to nick simply because of the fact of, 2-3 burly men just picking up the bike and putting it in the back of a van. You can't do that even with a tiny little smart car. So bikes are always going to be challenged in that way. So practically, what more can manufacturers of motorcycles actually do? Well, recently, many manufacturers have signed up to provide Datatag on all new registered bikes. And despite what your mate might tell you down the pub, the police do feel that this does act as a form of deterrent, but more importantly, it makes it a lot easier to trace stolen parts. So that's one positive step. Now, alarm systems are standard on pretty much every single car you buy these days. Now, you can buy aftermarket alarms for bikes. Some people swear by them, some people say that it's a nightmare, and after a couple of years, because of the exposure to outside weather and such like, that the alarms start going haywire and they're more hassle than they're worth. I mean, the internet's abound with horror stories of 2, 3, 4-year-old alarms that just have a complete mind of their own, strand bikers with an immobilised bike at the drop of a hat. But that is one area where I think bike manufacturers could do a little bit more. Car manufacturers did, and I think if bike manufacturers were to work collectively on developing a robust alarm system that could be used on bikes. Now, people will say, oh, what's the point? You can still lift it into the back of a van, an alarm going off and no one will hear it. And also, car alarms going off at the drop of a hat these days are so common that do any of you really pay a second notice to a car alarm going off? So you could argue that there's a lot of investment, a lot of commitment there for very little give back. And I do have some sympathy with that view. But I also believe in the view that the more difficult you can make it to be to steal anything, an extra layer of protection has got to be a good thing. But I think there are two areas of protection stroke deterrent where manufacturers really are missing a trick, and they could do so much more. The first is trackers. Not very expensive, about 200 quid to supply and fit. So I think manufacturers should be fitting trackers as standard on bikes. With their volume and mass purchasing power, they could be fitting trackers on bikes and it having probably only about 50 quid difference or 50 quid impact on the retail value of a bike, maybe even less. Now, when you're spending 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 upwards on a bike, you're really going to balk at an extra 50 quid, even 100 quid, let's say worst case scenario. No, I don't think you are. I think it's an absolute no-brainer. The statistics show that not every bike, but a significant proportion of bikes that are fitted with trackers, when they're nicked, especially if the theft is caught early on, before there's chance to kind of lock them away in shipping containers and get them out of the country, or strip them down, they have a very, very good track record of recovering that stolen bike. With the cost of insuring a bike in London or with a London postcode becoming increasingly expensive, surely it's in the manufacturer's best interest to make it easier and cheaper, particularly for younger people, to own a bike. And so therefore that's why fitting a tracker as standard from the factory for me is a no-brainer. The other area that I think manufacturers do have to address, and it's very cheap, it's very simple to do, is making it easier for owners to be able to physically secure and lock up their bikes. We hear all the time that motorcyclists are encouraged to chain their bikes up to an immovable object, and that we shouldn't just wrap a chain through the front or the rear wheel because it's really easy just to take those off and people take the bike and just leave the wheel behind. Well, that's great, but have you ever tried tying up some modern bikes? It's becoming increasingly difficult to get a decent sized chain through part of the frame, subframe, anything like that to be able to physically secure a bike. And with the very toughest chains comes a massive weight cost. Trying to lug around a 1 metre, 1.5 metre, 15mm link chain is a right royal pain in the backside. So this is where I think manufacturers need to make life a little more easy. I'd like to see some specific points on the frame where you could loop a chain through to physically secure the bike. So that could be on the rear subframe, one either side, could be on the front by the engine mounts, anywhere. Actually, you could even have one to the subframe right underneath the tail, just above the rear wheel. It's got to be accessible and easy. Likewise, what's happened to onboard storage on bikes? Anyone who owned a bike in the 80s and the 90s would know that underneath the seat you'd get quite a large space to be able to fit little bits and pieces in. Modern bikes have very, very little space under the seat. Certainly even under the seat of this thing, I could probably just about get a small disc lock in, but that's about it. So come on, manufacturers, let's get a bit more creative. If you could find the space underneath the seat to fit a solid metre chain, oh my god, all of us, we'd be laughing. It'd be brilliant. I said earlier though that it's not just the manufacturer's fault, and that Mayor Khan was only partially right. This is not an issue that can be laid at the door of one particular area. This needs a concerted, joined up effort from a number. So the manufacturers do have to play their part. But Mr. Khan, you have to put your money where your mouth is, and you've got to play your part. In central London, particularly, you've got to work with the local councils in the area, and there needs to be more secure parking for motorcyclists. Westminster City Council have started to introduce some ground anchors in some of their parking bays, but it's few and far between. It should become absolute common practice that where motorcycle parking bays are in London, there should be a fixed ground anchor securing point there as well. A number of councils are offering free parking for motorcyclists, which is great, lively incentive, except Westminster of course, who charge you £1 a day. That's another story. But as well as incentivising that free parking, incentivise us so it's safe to leave our bikes. And it wouldn't be difficult to do. The Mayor's London plan, which regulates planning, building, all that sort of stuff, you could quite easily put into the London plan something around secure motorcycle parking. You put stuff in that there has to be X number of disabled bays on any new development or anything like that. Do the same for motorcycle parking. The other thing, Mr. Khan, that you can do is you can recognise what motorcycles can do to help ease congestion and make motorcycling an integral part of your London travel plan. Loads has been done in London under successive London mayors for cyclists, and you can see the difference. Some of it's good, some of it in my opinion is not so good, but whatever, you can see that a lot has been invested. The same thing needs to happen for motorcycling. So come on, Mr. Khan, do your bit. But the third area that needs tackling is the police. The police have got to start taking this a bit more seriously. yes, you know, they've got funding issues, police numbers are down, and that's going to have an impact. And it's a simple fact, isn't it, that because the people that are interested in motorcycle security are a much smaller number than those that have a big interest in things like street robbery, burglary, that perhaps motorcyclists' voice isn't heard as strongly as it needs to be. But the police really do have to take motorcycle crime more seriously. Basically vehicle crime. Yeah, there's too much of, oh yeah, okay, report it to us, we'll give you a crime number, and oh, we've got no chance of ever finding out what's happened, so it just kind of go down as a statistic. And this is where central government need to do a little bit more. If we want to tackle these sorts of things, I'm sorry, you can't keep taking money away from the police service and saying you've just got to be more efficient. You've got to put some more money in, because sometimes the only way you can deal with these is by having greater numbers. So there you have it. I hope you found that of some interest. As ever, leave your comments. Thanks very much for watching. Ride safely out there, and I'll speak to you very soon. Cheers!